Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Brianna Bowling. I'm the founder of Retreat and Learn, and I have with me Satyam, who guides us in meditation and yoga at many of our retreats that we have when we're allowed to have retreats. I absolutely love Satyam. He truly lives what he teaches, and he has taught me that I am worth the time and the devotion that I spend on particular, for me, meditation. Meditation has been immensely helpful to me. And what I have learned during our retreats has truly changed my life. Satyam has taught me so much. So I'm very glad to be able to share him today with our Retreat and Learn audience. While we're live, feel free to post comments below and we will answer them while we are live. And if you're watching the replay, you can still post comments and we'll answer them as a reply in the comments. So with all due respect, and very excited to announce I'm welcome, Satyam. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's just so good to have you here. So I guess just to open up things, the topic of this is yoga more than a pose, and how yoga and proper breathing can calm the mind and relieve stress. So can you talk a little bit about that, just that general topic of how does yoga and meditation relieve stress?
Yeah, it's an interesting and very appropriate question. A lot of times people think of yoga as being merely the physical pose. And while that's important, yoga is really about quality of mind. And one of the unique things that we are as human beings is we can use our breath to enhance our quality of mind, to enhance how we feel. And so stress is basically a psychic reaction, a mental reaction. For instance, two people can be in the same circumstance of events, but one may feel stressful and one may not. So stress, to a large degree, is how we respond to a given circumstance. And how we respond is our state of mind. And the very simple answer, as we calm the breath, as we breathe in a more regulated systemic pattern, that will have a qualitative effect on our state of mind, on our quality of mind.
All right. So, to help me understand, I know that it does work because I've seen it in action. I know it works, but I don't know that I understand the real reasons why it works. And so when I'm slowing my breath and I'm taking the breaths the way that you've taught me to do so, is it that basically your body goes, hey, if she's acting calm, then she is calm, and then you become calm? Explain that a little bit, because I'm not sure I quite get why it happens.
Right. Okay. So we've got our physical body and our mental body, or our mind. Every mind has its own unique vibration, its own. And so when we slow down the breath is the linking point between the physical body and the mental body. And if we just take a deep inhale, retain the breath, and exhale, that lengthened respiration will actually elongate our mental wavelengths. If you think of it as like an EKG chart in a hospital, a very choppy mind will have very, very jagged wavelengths. And a calm mind will have very gradual, almost a straight line across. And if you just think of the breath as a way to lengthen those mental wavelengths, that has a dramatic effect on how we are, how our mind is, how calm it is. And the slower the mind is, the more comprehensive it is, the more stable it is, the deeper thinking it is. And the more jagged it is, the more kind of helter-skelter the mind is. And we feel that. You can see someone, when you talk to someone and they feel composed, relaxed, very concentrated, they're in a stable place. And sometimes when you see someone in a more frenetic condition, their mind is moving at is in what we might say in a state of jumpiness. It's maybe jumpy.
That all makes very good sense to me because I've seen it happen. But I know that I am a person who feels stress. You were talking about different people feel things differently. I'm a person who does feel stress. I'm a person who maybe doesn't breathe all that correctly. So, but when I'm in the middle of that, when I'm feeling anxious and stressed, I think it's pretty tough to actually practice what you're saying. So can you give us some tips of that when you're in that moment of anxiety? How do you get to the point where you can slow your breathing? Like, how do you clean your mind of being able to actually focus on your breathing?
Yeah, you brought up 2 points.
Okay.
Two very, very interesting points. One is we'll go with grandma's recipe. Just take a deep breath, right? When you're in that moment, just take a deep breath, like what they would say. The other thing, the other aspect is that it's kind of like when you're dehydrated. When you feel thirsty, the gig is up. You're already dehydrated. You have to drink ahead of time. And when you're in a very cold climate, they'll say, don't layer up when you get cold. Preserve your warmth. Stay warm rather than to get cold and try and get warm again. Similarly, here in this instance, through the yogic method, you're trying to breathe in such a way and live in such a way that you fend off stress. Once you get stressed, there is a way to calculate, but the whole idea is to try and live in a way where you can minimize that initial income. That said, once it does happen, let's say the gates fell,
Right.
the watersheds, it came through, we're underwater, we've overloaded. Then the best thing is if you're able to physically step away from the situation, perhaps, but also just to close one's eyes for a moment. If you're in a position where you can close your eyes and literally take one long, slow breath, that can help check the cycle of that stress. Because as that mind starts getting, it will generate momentum in that negative direction of stress, where the stress can lead to panic and bad decision making and that type of thing. But if you can check it by closing the eyes, then that will stop that progression or that degeneration of mind, and you'll at least stabilize and you'll gain the wherewithal to move back in the opposite direction. Hey, I am okay. This is okay.
Right.
I can do this. And the mind, it just needs a little bit of reassurance, which we all have inside. It just needs that reminder that I can handle this situation, whatever it may be.
And Satyam, one of the things that you've taught me that I think, partly by watching you, but also a lot of things that you say is that you don't have to do this perfectly. I mean, there is no such thing as a perfect way of breathing. There's a better way, a way of getting better. But I think sometimes we're really tough on ourselves in terms of, okay, well, I'm not good at meditating, or I'm not good at breathing properly, or I'm not good at yoga. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And I think you've taught me that. So I think you had some really good points there.
Yeah, no, it's important. The yogis say that if you're in a human body, it means you got stuff to work on. No one was born perfect. You've come here to do some things, and it's a perpetual learning curve. We're always trying to refine ourselves, and the path along progress is systolic. It has ups and downs and ups and downs. But ideally, through the ongoing endeavor, our lows are higher than our previous lows, and our highs are higher than our previous highs. So it's a constant endeavor, and to refine, to enhance, and to learn, and learn by practice and learn by sharing. And so, it's an ongoing endeavor.
Yeah, I like the word practice. I mean, I think that's something that's used a lot in yoga, but it's a practice, and you get better at it the more you do it. And that's certainly true. So, we talked about, one of the things we said, proper breathing. So can you give us some techniques, like what is proper breathing, or tell us what proper breathing is?
Right. Sure. In the yogic tradition, the breath flows in and out through the nasal passages. They say the mouth is for chewing and chatting, and the nostrils are for breathing and smelling. And so you breathe in and out through the nasal passages. You sit up nice and tall, try and relax through the shoulders. Ideally, you don't want to get that chest breathing where the chest is heaving. The shoulders and sternum should be immobile. Spine is tall. And then you breathe down into the low belly, and the navel point will go out. It's kind of counterintuitive. The lungs expand and press the navel out on the inhalation. And then exhale, draw the navel in towards the spine. And inhale, navel out, and exhale, navel in. And it has a dramatic, immediate effect. It will help the weightlifter lift more weights, and it'll help the meditator calm the mind quickly. It has a very dramatic effect, and it's immediate. It's within 1-2 breaths, one can wholly transform one's mental realm. So it isn't just some type of theory. Within one breath, one should able to physically feel a different vibration or quality of mind. And I remind my students that every time we start a class, take 2, 3 breaths, and you should feel a physical change, a physical vibrationary sensational difference in the mind. And that breath is that very unique medium that allows that transformation to happen.
So, I mean, you make it sound very simple, basically take a deep breath, do it slowly. I mean, are there, once you, I guess, have that baseline, that first step, is there other things that you build upon, or does it really remain, that's what it is? It's a simple concept that breathe deeply, or do you build?
There's two things. There's a build, and there's also a progression in that. First, I'll talk about the progression, then I'll talk about the building. The progression is that first we try something. And then as we try it, we become habituated to it. And as we perfect it, it becomes our nature. And so that's with all the yogic practices. You become the embodiment of that practice, that there's no difference between you and the practice. And when something becomes your nature, it becomes part of your being. And that breathing practice can become part of your actual being. So naturally, when you take one breath, it's going to be much more effective than a newcomer taking that breath. But anyone can go from newcomer to someone who's building the habit to someone who has made it their nature. Now that's one aspect. And
Okay.
Then there's how to build the technique. There's a state called kumbhak. Inhalation in Sanskrit is known as purak, and the exhalation is known as rechak. And kumbhak is known as the retention of breath. So when we inhale and then retain the inhalation and then exhale, that creates a distinct place of pause. And that brings the mind to a very calm, tranquil, steady place. And that's one way to start to deepen that breathing pattern. Another aspect is that there's a fourth stage of the breath. You've got your inhalation, purak, your retention, kumbhak, exhalation, rechak, and then shunya kumbhak, when the air is exhaled and you keep the air out. And by doing a few rounds of that 4-step breathing process, it will make the mind more calm. One will feel that. And as one becomes more adept at it, the mind will still experience greater degrees of tranquility or calmness. And then there's other aspects of the meditative endeavor, such as mantra and ideation, and that only builds and heightens and deepens the ability of the breath to have a significant effect on the mind.
You blow my mind. I'm really, honestly, I'm listening to you. Honestly, I feel calmer just listening to you. I mean, it's just great. So Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I don't even know necessarily everything that you're saying or understanding it, but I feel better. I mean, I maybe because you're thinking in that way. So I very much appreciate it. So does anything change? I know that, you were talking about your mind changes, obviously, and you were talking about that baseline, that it gets better and better, but do you physically change? Like building a muscle, do you build changes within your body from
most certainly
breathing?
Everything that we experience physically, psychically, emotionally starts with the inner recesses of the mind, and that creates a chain reaction, which is why if someone's under stress, their blood pressure may go up, their breathing may their respiratory rate may change. So if they're nervous, you'll start to sweat. So it all starts from that innermost cell of the mind. That creates a chain reaction through the mental realm and the physical realm. And so the moment you change your central point of cognition, that initial point of thought, then there's an effect throughout your whole mental and physical being. Everything gets refined and purified.
Okay. When you say it gets refined and purified, what do you mean by that? Help me, because I'm not sure I quite understand.
The blood pressure will go down.
Okay.
The breathing will become slower. The respiration rate. One will not suffer. When we have a thought, that triggers off the entire glandular system. If you think of apple pie, the salivary glands. There doesn't have to be pie in front of you. Just the thought of the pie will make the salivary glands secrete.
True.
And that happens with every good and bad propensity in the human experience. That's why it's so important to really know what we're thinking about, because that sets it all off. They talk about the master gland, the pineal gland being the master gland. In yoga, that's the sixth chakra. That's the Ajna chakra. That's the seat of the mind. And that controls so many of the bodily processes just by mere thought. Some people can suffer from anxiety by thinking a thought that is not even true. The thought's not true, but just believing in that untrue thought can make that their new reality, but by the same token, one can create a new reality and by thinking very pure and peaceful thoughts, that will affect one's whole. That's why the yogi is not affected by adverse circumstances, because those adverse circumstances are external. And the yogi will always have mental equipoise regardless of the external changes that are going on around them.
All right, I'm going to ask you a really, probably a very basic question, but what is a yogi? I mean, like, really, what is a yogi?
What is a yogi?
Yeah, I know.
Let me qualify. I'm not a yogi. Okay, my definition, well, what I would understand to yoga, who has their unit mind linked with the cause of supreme benevolence. That means their unit mind is not shaped by self-interest, narrow-minded desires, any type of peevishness, or that their mind is linked with universal mind or the cause of universal benevolence.
All right, so is it actually possible to get to that? I mean, to get to that level? I mean, it seems that's a pretty high level of thinking.
It is possible, but it's something that's attainable for every human being. We don't see it all that often, but it is possible. And as people practice and are encouraged in that endeavor, more and more people will achieve that state.
Okay. So yeah, just like anything else, practicing and you have a goal to get to.
Yeah. Well, right now we live in a society where people say, make more money, do this. And that becomes everybody's kind of unspoken goal. What's going to give you prestige and success in society? Mm-hmm. And we live in an era, or at least I'll say I grew up in an era, where those things were all based on materialistic gains. And there have been, and India is also being goaded in that direction these days. But there have been periods where parts of India were very much guided by yogic ideals. And those were the values that society appreciated and embraced. And because of that external influence, more and more shot for those targets, and the general level of society raised because of it. They had a different goal or a different value. Yeah. What I mean to say is that helps a lot. It's one thing for the unit person to want to have the inner desire, but it's another thing where you live in a society where people respect that desire. Then people will be in competition, friendly competition, to become better in that endeavor. And it's not a materialistic endeavor, it's a spiritual endeavor. So when you have both inner support, what we call auto-suggestion, and you're living in a society, what we call outer suggestion, you're getting positive feedback from the outside to move in a sentient manner, then it becomes much easier to move in that way, and more people get success.
I mean, it's a really, really lofty goal that, I mean, wow, if I could even get a little ways there, I would feel, I think, a whole lot better. So it's great to know that it's possible.
It is possible. And the best thing about it is it all happens one breath at a time. And one can feel yoga is a practice, and it has a practical effect on our existence. So it's just like if you do one forward fold, people feel stiff, and they do one forward fold, one back bend, and immediately they feel some tangible benefits. And if you do a little bit more, the physical body will start to be transformed. That's why physical yoga classes are very popular, because one, the effects are pretty much immediate, and they're very tangible. Everybody can see their physical body. You can see and feel it, and it has a very So that's why that became pervasively common across the U.S. Whether people are interested in meditation, whether they're interested in anything else, the yogic diet, whatever, they go to these classes and they get because they feel better from it.
Right. Now, what's a physical yoga? I mean, I think you and I have talked about this, but probably some of the people listening don't know that. So when you say physical yoga class, what defines that, and how is that different than a different type of yoga class, the ones that you offer?
Okay. Well, I do offer physical,
That's true.
physical courses. So what I will say this, there's only one type of yoga, and that yoga is unit mind to cosmic mind. That's the whole, but that said, in today's world, it did get kind of chopped up and divided up, and there are different elements. There's Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga yoga is the classic definition of yoga. Ashta means 8, Ang means limbs, and it's the 8-fold path of yoga. The third step of that is asana, A-S-A-N-A, last A silent, asana. And it means a position that brings a position when held brings a state of mental equipoise. And so this aspect of yoga that became so popular is based on the asana, or the yoga postures. And that's 1/8 of Ashtanga yoga. So we can call it 12.5%. But that's what everybody's keying in on these days. And the reason why it's popular is because it's very tangible, it's effective, and it calms the mind. When meditation, we're using the mind, and then it has an effect on the body. In physical yoga, you're using the body to have an effect on the glands. That's what the physical postures are not, although they enhance the muscles, tendons, ligaments, and joints, they're based on the glandular system. You're putting pressure on various glands and off of various glands. That balances the glandular system. Those physical postures, by balancing the glands, then have a calming and deliberate effect on the mind. And that's why it's such an effective tool. And the name of this physical aspect of yoga is known as Hatha yoga. Ha is the acoustic root of the throat chakra, the Vishuddha chakra. Ta is the acoustic root of the Agyan chakra, or the mind. And you're using Ha, the last physical aspect. The Vishuddha chakra is the top physical aspect for the physical body, and you're using that to control the mind. Hatha yoga, based on the Vishuddha chakra exerting influence on the mind, on the Agyan chakra. And that's where the name Ha and Ta comes from. And people call it Hatha yoga.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we don't have a whole lot of time left. I know that we try to keep these at like probably 30 minutes or so. And so, one of the things that I think that some of the people probably listening right now, they're like, okay, this is great. I fully understand how this is going to help me, that proper breathing and yoga and meditation and all of these things are going to help me feel better. But I'm stuck at home. I can't get to a class. And even if I'm watching them online, sometimes it's a little bit different. So can you give the people watching some tips in terms of like, what should they start with? If they're brand new at this, what should they start with? And then maybe what's the next phase past that?
Okay. Yeah. One thing to start with is maybe to try and sit quietly and just for breathing purposes, maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds. There are some good online resources, but to do, a yoga practice can be as simple as doing a forward bend, a back bend, a side bend, and that can be, it does not need to be a very complex array of yoga postures. Just simple postures, like if you do a forward bend and a back bend, it works the theory of opposites, and that can help. If you have access to online resources, you can get some good ideas there as well. But a lot of people, just by sitting and breathing quietly and doing two simple postures, literally a standing forward fold, try and touch your toes, and then stand up, bring the hands behind the back, and inhale back. Just doing something simple like that will help and will start the process of developing. It happens. We build on it little by little, is what I would say.
No, I mean, I think that makes sense, that you start. Is there a particular time frame that I'm like, I know, like, I don't want to put a time on this, like anything that it takes practice. It's as long as it takes to get there, obviously. But I mean, if they were going to set aside time, if they only worked at this for 5 minutes a day, are they going to get benefits from that? Is that enough to actually get a benefit or to calm the mind and relieve some of this anxiety that everyone's feeling? Or do they have to set aside a half hour? Is 5 minutes enough?
5 minutes is enough. Absolutely. 5 minutes is enough. And I would say that quality is more important than quantity. So if you say, I'm really going to give my all in this 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 2 breaths. If you really say, I'm going to give it and focus, then that's enough to get the ball rolling. The other thing is our minds are extremely flexible, and the mind will like that 5 minutes, and it'll say, hey, let's stay here. I kind of like it. Bermuda's kind of a nice place. Why not let's hang around? So the mind, when fed a very productive and sentient practice, will adjust and start. At the beginning, it might be a little bit of a struggle. I'm not saying there is struggle at the beginning. It might be a little bit, hey, why are you having me close the eyes? But the mind will adjust. And at the beginning, just apply yourself, and that will give more momentum to build upon. And it'll be a very natural progression.
And I have found that to be true. I mean, I started off with 5 minutes, and 5 minutes seemed like probably an eternity. And just sitting there and just sitting still. I mean, 30 seconds seemed like an eternity, and it's gotten better. I mean, sometimes I actually crave 15 minutes, and it just completely baffles me that I actually want to sit still for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with what you just said. I'm going to throw one more thing that we actually didn't say we were going to discuss, but I noticed it the other day when I was doing my meditation, and I did my meditation shortly after I had had my lunch. And I was sitting there and I realized that my meditation wasn't as effective right after I ate. Now, that might just be for me, but I was curious, does the time of the day or the food in your stomach make a difference in how the quality of your meditation or your yoga?
Absolutely. Both physical yoga and meditation should be done on an empty stomach. After eating, the physical body and sometimes the mental body both need rest. And all the bloods, you're working on digestion, and the body's very engaged. When the physical body, when the stomach's empty, that's the best way. And if you're about to do your yoga practice and you're feeling hunger, if you can just take a glass of water, drink half a glass of water or so, and then fend off that hunger. But the mind is super alert when the stomach's empty. Now, I'm not saying when you're really hungry and you're getting hungry.
That's what I was going to ask you. So how hungry? When you say empty, do you mean like haven't eaten in 24 hours? Is that when it's most effective? Or it's getting ready to be time? I mean, what is the most effective time for that?
The yogis are very keen that when you feel hunger, you should eat, because the digestive juices have been they're in the stomach, but when you wake up, the stomach's generally basically empty, and that's a great time to try and go do a few minutes of meditation and a few postures. And then let's say your normal eating time in the evening is 6:30 or 7. Don't change your eating time. Just try and build in at, say, okay, at 6:15 or 6 o'clock, I'm going to sit for 5 minutes of meditation and do 5 or 10 minutes worth of yoga postures, and then a 1 minute relaxation. And if you build it into your day, then at that time, it'll be very effective and very efficient. So that's the best time. After eating, it's very difficult.
Yeah. And I didn't know that until I was sitting there doing it the other day, and it just occurred to me. I'm like, this is just not going as well. So right. An accidental discovery on my part. But
no, you got the right answer. That actually shows that your meditation is effective, because you're having good progress in your meditation when the stomach's empty. It means you know what good meditation is, and you can see this isn't working because I'm not getting that reaction that I was getting prior.
Right. Yeah. I guess it's great. Yeah. I can tell the difference. So that's good.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you want to add, Satyam, that might be helpful to people that we haven't talked about?
One of the key points to success in yoga is sincerity. That you know if you're being sincere with yourself. So it's not the clothing you wear or where you're sitting or all those external accoutrements. It's just giving yourself the sincere effort and time to be true to yourself and to cultivate a sentient desire and say, you know what? I'm going to explore this with an open mind. Let's see what can happen. We have to remember we're psychic beings. We're not physical beings. We're psychic beings. Our happiness is felt in the mind. And the more we can goad that mind to a peaceful place, the better off we are. But we have to give ourselves the chance. And so just giving ourselves a sincere chance, a sincere opportunity, then that's the main ingredient.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true for almost everything in life. To have an open mind, you don't know what's going to happen unless you open your mind to the possibilities. So,
Yeah.
I think that's awesome advice and one that we can all learn from. And I so much appreciate the time that you spent today with us, and also all the time that you spent at the retreats, and the difference that you've made in my life, and the difference that you've made and everyone who's come to our retreats. I think you definitely have been life changing. So, appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here and for inviting me, and actually, and all the collaboration we've done. It's been just a wonderful journey, and I've learned an equally amount from you and your openness and sharing, and I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, that's how life is. It's good. So, and if anybody who is interested in taking a class with Satyam, especially once we can go back to live classes, Satyam does have classes that he gives in, it's not really, is it the Annapolis area, or is it, what's the?
I'm in southern Anne Arundel County, which I would say what we call South County. So, I teach in southern Anne Arundel and northern Calvert counties on a regular basis when
We can. Normal. Yeah, but also on you have a website. It's renaissanceyoga.com. Is that correct? Make sure I have that right.
Yep.
And on there, Satyam's been very generous in being able to put out some podcasts, not podcasts, but I guess, are they podcasts is what you call them?
They're podcasts.
And they have meditation. And honestly, one of the things that Satyam does that I really love are his singing bowls. I mean, they're pretty nice. So, anyways, but he actually has some of the podcasts with the singing bowls too, and I've listened to those too. So, if you're interested in kind of practicing or starting the practice, Satyam definitely has some resources available to you on his website. So I'll post that website a link in the comments so you can get to it later. But that's it. So anything else you want to add?
No, it was great to be here and talk to everyone. And if there are any questions that folks have, they can always contact me through your site or through my site, and I'll be looking forward to picking up on the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we next week, just so everybody knows too, next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about homeschooling. Everybody who's been suddenly had to start homeschooling when they didn't plan on it. I have a really awesome guest next Wednesday who's going to kind of give us some tips and tricks so that we can all get a little bit more sane in that area too. So thanks very much, Satyam, and we will see everybody next week.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.